Hey guys, how's it going? VaulSC here. Today I want to take the time to talk about the Invincible Army, the newest YuJing Sectorial, and they've been out for a little while now. I have been speaking about them a little bit so far. I've done at least one bat rep on YouTube featuring Invincible Army, and I've done another game on the tabletop simulator. Haven't played them quite a lot yet, but I have been starting to build the lists a bit more, and I've got the starter set on my desk, which I've been painting up, planning on playing some more games with them. So they're an interesting sectorial. They have some very clear strengths and weaknesses, and I want to take the time to break them down a little bit more. And in this video, I focus a bit more on the possible lists that you might want to go for if you're trying to play them competitively. They do have some pretty hard limitations, but the kinds of things that are possible with the sectorial are interesting. So we're going to jump into it. I'm going to take a look. Alright, so just starting out, I think, with Invincible Army, one thing we have to really be aware of and sort of commit to is the idea that if you are planning on running this sectorial for some very specific models that you just want to include in your list, let's say you want to take the Mo Wang or the Hulang Shock Trooper or the Hack Tau, and you're just putting these guys into your list until you run out of points. Well, you may as well play vanilla YuJing, because vanilla YuJing will have access to all of these guys. You can base your list around 2 or 3 of these more expensive troopers, and then pad out the list with your Guangxi and your Shaolin monks, and that's going to be a better way of playing. That's going to be a stronger, more competitive YuJing list. The thing about Invincible Army is that there are a few things you can achieve without, there are a few things you can only achieve by playing the sectorial, things that you can't do with basic vanilla YuJing, and it's going to be around about the fire teams, isn't it? You know, that's always the way of it with sectorials. You'd never really play a sectorial unless you're going to really leverage what's possible with the fire teams, or leverage the availability of certain troopers when they're not available in your basic vanilla faction. Or if, for example, there are specific mercenary troopers that you can't take otherwise, and that's really what you want to build your list around, there you go. But with Invincible Army, no additional mercenary troopers. The only trooper that I can think of that you might want to take a lot of that you couldn't do in vanilla is maybe the YuJing jump infantry. That's the first example I can think of. Everybody else, I don't really see any reason for spamming lots of them. So it's more going to be about the link teams. So obviously, as everybody knows, it's possible to do a list based around tactical awareness and the Zuyongs. We're going to focus on that quite heavily in this discussion. But the alternative to that, in my mind, is the Zanjeer link team, which will then include either one of or both of the Haidao, multispectral visor sniper, or the Shang-Chi, possibly with a Spitfire and tactical awareness, or a heavy rocket launcher, just to be supported by the Zanying. Sorry, the Zanshi, I should say. Don't forget too, you can also add this FTO, Pangolin FTO, in any fire team, which is one little guy that I don't want people to forget about, because let's say you run him as just a cheerleader, like a 13-point cheerleader, and he hangs nearby to your link team. If you take some losses and you can't recover them with a doctor or engineer or something like that, this guy can actually be brought into the link team as a backup, so bear that in mind. But yeah, this is again a sectorial that has no smoke grenades whatsoever. They don't have any little war bands running around. It's really hard to build a list that goes above 14 or 15 orders while still including the real kick-ass stuff that you're supposed to be including for this sectorial to be effective. And we'll run into that soon. Okay, let's begin, I think, by discussing the Zuyong link team. I think this is going to be the biggie. And just in general, I find that the lists that I'm coming up with for the sectorial that are limited insertion lists tend to be stronger and feel better. Like feel as though they'd actually perform better in the long term, more so than the non-limited insertion lists. That's just what I've found so far. Doesn't mean it's not possible to do like a 14 or 15 order list. You definitely can't run the sectorial, with 19, 20 orders, that kind of thing. Even if you are able to wrangle it with all the bots and low cost Zanshis, you just wouldn't want to. Okay, so building a list around the Zuyong Link team, there's one particular synergy which really stands out, and I think most people have discovered now and try to leverage, try to hinge things around, is this combo involving Taisheng. So you want to pick Taisheng, go down to the chain of command Taisheng with the Mark 12 chain Colt stun grenades, and you pop her in there. And the Dalian Lieutenant with multi-sniper rifle. So these two models synergize with each other quite well. Let's just have a talk about what's going on here. So you've got the Dalian Lieutenant that allows you to fulfill the requirement of having a lieutenant on your list, so that's ticked off your list. He is a camo marker, so not always that easy for your opponent to kill if you really want to avoid him dying for some reason. But the good thing about the setup is that you've got Taisheng as the chain of command, plus the Dalian as a lieutenant sniper, so you can actually leave your lieutenant covering a fire lane, and if he does get shot, Taisheng then becomes the leader, so it's not really that bad. Now, the other thing about it is that Taisheng has the NCO rule, and apparently, if you use the NCO rule to spend the lieutenant's order, it counts as just a normal regular order from the pool. Therefore, it can be spent on Taisheng while she's in a link team. And that is how you're going to get that turbo boost of 2 additional orders on top of all of your normal rollout orders and your tactical awareness. So I think that's a really important combination to start this list off with. It should be noted we've got a mine layer back there. That's really nice for helping to protect when you don't have first turn, although you'll always be wanting to take first turn with this sort of setup. Adding the chain Colt in is a really big deal because none of the other ZhuYongs or Haidao actually have a direct template weapon. Stun grenades is really interesting. That's not going to come up very much. But I can imagine a situation where you really want to move your link team past a particular corner and there's maybe some flamethrowers or something there, or Emorats, or a tag, and you might want to stun them first, then come around into close combat or blast them with boarding shotguns. So it may come up, but stun grenades will also potentially be a spec fire option in some rare cases, and and a defensive ARO option in some cases when you know that neither of your other guns can take down the target, but a really lucky stun grenade might. Like if you've got the link team intact and a tag comes really close, you throw a couple of stun grenades. If you get lucky, the tag's stunned, can't actually continue hurting you for that turn. So pretty big. Just a point here that we could be taking the Breaker Combi Rifle Chain Colt 10-byte instead. I just feel that for the same points, it's going to be an overlap because we're going to have the Deflector level 2 anyway with the other ZhuYongs, so it's a bit of a redundancy thing there. We don't really want to pay the extra points for it. The Mark 12, in the context of the Link Team, does a lot more damage than the Breaker Combi Rifle does, and at better range, so I think that's a bit more important. We will have the mid-ground, the 0 to 8 range band covered anyway, especially with the Chain Colt and boarding shotguns elsewhere in the Link Team and so on. Not to mention a heavy pistol, so that's going to go in there. Taisheng is close combat 17, whereas the ZhuYongs are not quite that. They're 15. And the Haidao we're going to add in there is 14. So having Taisheng as a leader, I think is pretty good, because if you're in this situation where your opponent defends with a smoke grenade and you can't shoot them any longer, well, you've got the Chain Colt, but you've also got the ability to move in close combat, surround your target with other ZhuYongs, and whack them with the CC-17 model instead, which will come up very rarely, but when it does, it's quite effective. So that's how I would sort of start this off. Then we bring in the actual ZhuYongs themselves. So one model we're always going to take in this sort of list is the HMG with tactical awareness. So you're always going to want an HMG if you can have it in a list like this, because if your opponent's leaving out any AROs at all, there's no better gun to remove them with than the HMG, because it's going to be firing with 5 dice, BS-16, and so on and so forth. It's very cheap as a ZhuYong, and of course the tactical awareness means 1 additional order for your Alpha Strike, which is really, really, really big deal. You might even think of chucking a second HMG in there, but for reasons I'll talk about in a moment, I don't think that's the best bet. The other model I like is the Combi Rifle 10-bot. So the great thing about this is that if we include a Haidao killer hacker, he's going to benefit from the deflector, but also because these guys aren't immune to isolation. If we have, for example, a Proxy Mark II with assault hacking device pop up in the middle of the table, surprise Oblivion onto Taisheng, that deflector level 2 could really save us from completely losing the game. So I think that's a really big thing you want to spend points on, even though it's 0.5 SWCs, going to be worth it. I think the 0.5 SWCs has more to do with the Harris option. Actually, no, it doesn't. It's It's more for possibly the tactical awareness, because you can get a deflector without paying. No, that deflector does cost 0.5. So yeah, it might be because it's harass. Either that or I don't even know. Tactical awareness or Harry's. Moving on. So we've got Taisheng, two Zuyongs. The Dalian's not going to be part of the Link team, of course. So that's 3 guys so far. The 4th member of the Link team, it could be a specialist, but Taisheng's already a specialist anyway, and we're going to be adding a hideout. Let's go and add the hideout now. So one way to go is to throw in the multispectral visor level 2. That's going to deal with people trying to defend themselves by throwing smoke. He's very powerful as a ARO piece. But I actually don't want to go for the hideout because we're going to be moving out across the table. We're going to get into HMG range really quickly. The HMG is going to be better for spraying people down than the multi-sniper is. And it's just going to be balls-to-wall aggressive, this list. So for that reason, I'd rather not take the multi-sniper. I'd rather take the killer hacking device instead, because if we do run into a surprise assault hacker, the hideout can then deal with it. Also, as we're going so far across the board, we're going to be running into repeater range and things like that, and possibly coming into range of enemy killer hackers anyway, and this guy's just going to shred them. With a red run, they're going to be -9 effectively because of the red run deficit and the debuff, I should say, and the deflector from the Zuyongs. So that's going to be really strong. Plus, he brings a boarding shotgun to the Link team, which we don't already have. So that boarding shotgun is going to be crucial when you're going in there. If they don't have cover, he's hitting on 22s with 3 shots. So it's going to be really, really powerful. So the last member of the Link team, it could be another tactical awareness in the form of another Combi Rifle or another HMG. That would be fine. Because the more tactical awareness we have and the more NCO we have, the closer we get to like 15 or 16 orders, which is going to be really, really powerful, getting right from your deployment zone all the way to your opponent's deployment zone and really capitalizing on that. But I feel like we've got enough here. I mean, we're going to have 10 orders to start with. That can't be stripped back with the command token because it's limited insertion. We're going to have 2 for the NCO on top of that, plus another 2 tactical awareness orders. So that's going to be 14. 14's a pretty good number for racing across the board and killing things. So my decision here is to go with the missile launcher. And I like the missile launcher because unlike the hideout with the multi-sniper, you can really punish people for just absolutely trying to hide their troopers in total cover against your Link team, because with 14 orders you come right round to the back and start hitting them in spots where the missile launcher is going to clip things. Also, if you're going second, that missile launcher on the Link team is a little bit more devastating than the multi-sniper. To be fair, the hideout is probably better as an ARO piece because of the MSV2. There's going to be a lot of situations where one's better than the other. But I like having the missile launcher there for that real punishing factor of moving through the table so far that you're coming into little lines we can get to. I mean, if you imagine the hideout shooting like one Guangxi and killing it, that's a great outcome. But if the missile launcher fires at it and clips the Guangxi plus another model, that was otherwise going to stay in total cover for the rest of the turn, that's such huge value, especially if it's a lieutenant or a doctor or something with, hacking ability or something with the ability to come after your Link team when it's their turn. He does have a light shotgun as well, which is really nice, and even the breaker pistols. So if you do come into 0 to 8 range and there's nobody else nearby and the Zuyong needs to react, at least he's not stuck for options. He's got that there. So up to 6 men total. That's looking really good. One, I think, mandatory trooper that has to go in here is the Zanjeer Hacker. And this is important because you're going to have some situations where your opponent's deciding to stand firm. They've got some ARO pieces out there. You move around the corner with your HMG, absolutely spray them down, but then you get crit. So if you get crit by something that does 2 wounds, for example, your Zanshi can bring him back to life and you can have another go at it. If you lose your Link team in that way, or your point man, and you can't revive him, that's massive. So I think the Zanshi YuJing definitely needs to be in there. The next option I like for this list is the Zanjeer Fort Observer. So you take the cheapest one, who incidentally is actually the best one anyway, the Fort Observer submachine gun. I really wish that we could have a cheaper infiltrating specialist option, but since there's nobody else for the job, this guy's still really, really good with his effectively 2 wounds for NWI. Not all the time, but a lot of the time NWI is going to kick in there because he's going to reveal when he's not up against shock, most likely. But I think this guy's more for the later game, the follow-up stage, where you've moved your link team out into a corner of the table and you've crushed a whole bunch of enemy models. And then in future turns, you're going to be completing the mission, and this guy's going to be doing that. He can be pretty handy defensively as they're coming through the table to try and crack your link team when it's them going first. The DEP or the mines can be quite a surprise when he comes out of camo stage, and you can put him on top of buildings and things and come down from them with climbing plus, so that I think it's a really big deal. So with 2 slots left in our little list, this is the point in time where, you know, we're going to have more disagreement about what to take. I think some people here might want to go for one of the attack bots, although you don't have assisted fire in this list. One choice I sometimes look at is the Zanjeer Hacker, because it nicely rounds you up to 6 SWCs, and putting fairy dust up means that you're even less likely to lose your lieutenant or something like that. Your chain of command Taisheng, I should say, from a unexpected assault hacker. So this guy's a really, really solid option. Another thing I thought of is throwing in a secondary high Dao. Like, for example, you make this guy the chain of command guy and take chain of command away from Taisheng, bring the cost back down to like 290, and then you can afford like one more bot, like a Chai Yakong. So that could be good if you're worried about losing the Dalian because it's a sniper and losing Taisheng because she stands out like in the middle of the table. So that might be a better option. And by themselves, I mean, just a specialist, you know, with effectively 2 wounds, still not that bad. So that's one way we could look at going. I think that it could be a good idea to actually throw in another Zuyong. Like if we just take a single forward observer Zuyong like this, that leaves us a final 8 points to chuck in a flashball spot and round out the list. And that way you leave your forward observer sitting next to the link team. And if something happens to one of them, you can reform the link team and still have 5 members. Or alternatively, if the Zuyongs move out and you've still got one of them sitting back in your deployment zone with just, you know, a Combi Rifle and a forward observer option, it can be a good arrow piece with the willpower for the flash pulse and surviving with, you know, good armor, 2 wounds. And later in the game, if it's turned into a bloodbath, that model might be the model that comes out and actually hits the objectives at the end. And if you've only got 8 points left, the Chai Yakong is the best way to go. So some variation of this is good. I think you should always go for first turn if you can possibly do that. And the plan is just to try and pick a route throughout the table and move around until you've killed as many people as you possibly can. Don't be afraid of just going absolute 100% balls to the wall aggression and just come around to the back of their lines and shoot models outside of total cover. And you've got the firepower to do that. That huge turbo boost with the NCO and the Dalian, I think it's a really big deal. And again, if you can even just manage to move them just running down the board and killing, you know, whatever the enemy's long-range guns are, you can have them camped somewhere, and then your Dalian might be, you know, really powerful because they've got nothing to shoot back at it with, and the Dalian can actually cover off different lanes that they may have to run, you know, warbands over to your troops and engage them in close combat. Another way you may play with this is to spend, you know, about 8 or 9 orders moving them out and getting some kills, and then the remaining 5 orders just moving the back, which is heaps of orders if you're just moving the back into cover. That way you do a hit and run, you maybe kill, you know, 4 or 5 models, run back, and then you just defend. You just leave your Dalian up and running, you leave your missile launcher, you know, covering the table, and they've got, you know, 2/3 of an army left to try and come back after you, and the game just gets easier and easier and easier as you carry on through that. So, pretty strong list. I think if you're going to be playing Invincible Army, you should probably play something like this at some point. The next list I want to look at in a little bit of detail is a bit of a gimmicky one that I don't think will work that well in the long term, but is interesting. If you go over to the YuJing, this guy has availability 4. We're not quite going to take 4 of them, I don't think, but if we just take 3 of them, normally taking 3 drop troopers is not a good idea because there'll be limited placings for them, and you're burning so many points on them, and there are going to be so many models that they just can't get to, that it's not really worthwhile. The thing is with the YuJing is they've all got 2 wounds effectively, and they can do damage just by landing. And if you've got 3 of them, you may be in a scenario where, you know, the first one lands successfully, does some damage with the explode, takes a wound, maybe fires a boarding shotgun, and clears a little bit of a path. Then you bring in the next one around that spot, and there's less stuff to actually attack it, and you may create a bit of a beachhead and an opening with which to start the turn. So if we look at it this way, we take 3 of those guys. After doing that, we may as well chuck the Zanjeers in there. We're going to definitely want the hacking device. Possibly the Pangoling's better, because then you don't have to waste an order setting up the controlled jump. So more orders for the guys landing, but we're going to chuck the Zanjeer in anyway. Zanjeer, Fort Observer, Lieutenant, and a Combi Rifle, just to pad out the link team. And this time we will put in the Hideout Multispectral Visor Level 2 Sniper, because we're going to have something to defend when it's not our turn, after we've been damaging people to YuJing. If you get first turn with this list, you should always go for it, in my view. Okay, we need the Doctor as usual, because there may be a time when we need to just drop the Hideout into unconscious state and then revive him. Also, it might even be worth taking one of the Zanjeers and turning it into an HMG Zanjeer, just because we don't have an HMG in the list, and this is going to be a BS14 HMG with 5 dice for only 19 points and 1 SWC, so it's probably worth doing. Then we can pop in just some cheerleaders, really cheap stuff, throw in another TR bot as well, just because we're going to be able to put assisted fire onto it, and if we don't get first turn, it might be useful for defending like part of your deployment zone. And I don't know if we want Zanjeer, probably too expensive. At this point, we're probably going to be wanting to just throw in a lot of cheap stuff. I'll take this FTO as well, since it can join link teams, and just try and get as many orders into the list as we can, and just hope that the YuJing actually do their jobs, right? They do really well. I throw another Pangoling in there, another 17 points. This is actually probably, it's probably better to round it out at about 4 or 5. Put this guy in there. So something like that. So we've got 15 orders in there. And what we'd do is we'd put, say, the boarding shotgun guy in one group, and the other 2 in the other group. So what happens is we take first turn if we possibly can. Opponent strips 2 orders from group 1 most likely. We're already down 2 orders that we can't see in the table, so that brings us back to 6. But with 6 orders there, we then spend 1 order for controlled jump. We've got 5 left, and then we can start bringing people in. So we're probably bringing the boarding shotgun guy first, land somewhere to clear the way, hopefully landing. He's jumping down on what, a 16? No, 15. And they will be able to hack transport if they've got a hacker. But if he does land, he may blow something up. He may fire his boarding shotgun. You've got another 4 orders in that group for him to continue shooting things. He can land in range of like 1 Combi Rifle or 1 Chain Rifle and take it, because he's got that NWI. And after he's done that little clearance, you then bring in your next YuJing with, say, a multi-rifle and start spending a couple of orders on him till he gets some kills. Then you bring in the YuJing, the Spitfire. And having 3 of them means that even if one of them doesn't manage to make the jump and scatters off somewhere else, you've got more of them to bring in. Now, I'm not saying that this is a particularly good list, but it has got some serious potential. You might be playing, in a tournament where you've got your link team and you're playing on a table where you know that your opponent has a lot of models, and they are going to be scrunching up a lot of little models back behind a few bits of terrain, because the deployment zone is very sparse. And if you bring out your really huge tactical awareness push, maybe it's not going to work for certain reasons. Maybe they've got really good hacking in there, or maybe they've got some Emirates or some reason why you might not be able to pull that off. So you go with the YuJing list instead, and you jump the YuJing down on models. It can be a great way of doing a lieutenant assassination as well. That can be really powerful. A decapitation could be really strong as well, just landing a YuJing next to somebody's lieutenant. So if you want to try the YuJings, this is the kind of list that I'd advocate. You can even win later in the game after losing all 3 of them, because if you've done sufficient damage, you can then spend command tokens moving some orders from Group 2 into Group 1, and then you move out with a Zanjeer HMG and a Hideout MSV2, and you're still going to be able to get a lot done, a lot of kills. Alright, so with those 2 lists out of the way, let's look at a bit more of a standardized, all-rounded Invincible Army list. And again, it's going to be about the Zanjeers. So we're going to go Lieutenant, Basic Decoy, we'll take 1 Hacker, and we'll take a Fort Observer. No, we'll take that. Do we want an HMG? I'll just put the Fort Observer in now. We may change it out for the HMG. But then we want the Haidao MSV2. Really strong. Not quite as good as the Kamau. But although he loses NWI, sorry, loses mimetism, he does gain NWI. So sometimes that will actually be better. We definitely want the Zanjeer for this list because, you know, it's an all-rounder list. We're going to be doing a variety of different kind of scenarios with it. We really need him for the mid-game presence and the button pressing. Always going to be wanting to take the Doctor in there. Really, really good choice. And then after that, we can start adding in some cheerleaders. It's good that we can take 2 flashball spots. I always want to do that in a list like this because cheap cheerleaders, we're going to really need to save the points elsewhere. And then we can start digging into the fun stuff. So what you could do is you can base the list around, for something like a Mowang. So the Mowang Spitfire, for example, or even the Red Fury, he goes in there. You've still got another 90 points to spend on little extras. So that's when you start throwing in other troopers. The other way you can go is to pop in the Shang-Chi. Take the Shang-Chi Spitfire with Tactical Awareness, and he becomes part of the Zanjeer group. And the Zanjeers become a squad that can either defend with the Haidao or move out with the Shang-Chi, so that can be really strong as well. You can probably afford 2 Zanjeer on a list like this, but just remember some of your cheerleaders, if you take, for example, the Pangolins, are going to be taking up a lot of space. Still got 250 points left here. Could even take in an attack bot. Another thing I sometimes look at is the Hulang, just because this guy's a bit like a Shikami, but the difference between him and the Shikami is that he sacrifices ODD for mimetism and for deployment level 2, which I actually prefer because he's going to be able to get into the enemy lines a lot quicker, and he's a lot better at shooting than the Shikami is. So yeah, you can probably round this out to about 15 orders. Although the Hack Tower is something I tend to take more often in a vanilla list. If you aren't in the mood to try out all the fancy new toys that YuJing have suddenly got, and you want to take somebody who's a lot older, then the Hack Tower, I mean, is probably better for winning tournaments in general than taking some of the fancy new stuff. Let's just have a look at what that's like. If we take away a Zanjeer, take away the Shang-Chi, and then throw in the Executive Order HMG instead. This guy's pretty cool because then we probably won't really need the Zanjeer with the HMG. We've still got a really powerful link team with a Haidao in it, and we've still got plenty of points left over to go with. So with this sort of setup, we could probably still afford a YuJing, although it takes our points up pretty quick. Yeah, we definitely want to take as many cheerleaders as possible. So if I go back to the Pangolin, it might even be a good idea to throw in the FTO in this style list, just so he can make up the link team here. So bring the Yao Kongs over here. Still got 245 left. Pop in a Rushi. Or a TR bot actually might not be a bad idea. Just because we do have that hacking device. I quite like the idea of throwing in a Rushi here, even though there's not much smoke and there's no smoke in this list at all, because we want more things that can attack and move out really quickly. So with the Rushi in there, we've still got 1 SWC which we could spend. We've even got enough for that TR bot there anyway. There it is there. And with 10 points left, I don't think we have anything left here. Okay, so we could actually turn this Zanjeer Fort Observer into just 2 more Zanjeers. Actually, no. There's only 4 availability for Zanjeers in this sectorial, which is a bit weird. So level 11 points. I'm pretty sure we could drop something else in there to make way for it. If we take this guy, turn it down to just a Minesweeper, then we'd have enough for like a 5th person. We've got enough Zanjeers already. So with just 16 points left, maybe we could throw in a sensor bot. So something like this. So in terms of going offensive, you've got the Rushi there to put in the hacking device assisted fire, or the Hack Tower just moves out straight away and actually just moves across the table to get some shots off. The only thing I regret about this list is that a lot of the cheerleaders here are a bit deadweight. just the basic Zanjeers here can be picked off if the opponent gets in round the back. I mean, they've just got Combi Rifles. It'd be better if there was a bit more substance to the Link team. Pangolins obviously have no guns. You've got a couple of flash bots in there, but you're really relying on a lot of robots to be the cheerleaders, which is one thing I find is a bit of a weakness about Invincible Army. But again, if you're not going to run the limited insertion version of these guys, I would probably go with something that's a bit like this. You've got the Hideout MSV2 sniper in the Zanjeer Link team, a bunch of cheerleaders, and then 2 or 3 guys to back that up. And it could be the Mo Wang instead of the Hack Tower. It could be Yan Huo. Probably not Guija. Wouldn't really go with the Guija. Or even this new Hulang guy. So there are some options there. Another thing that you could potentially do with the sectorial is to take the Yan Huo and you grab the FTO missile launcher guy and you make a link team out of it. So you go to the YuJing and you take the tactical awareness Haris guy with the Combi Rifle, and then you take either another Yan Huo if you're feeling like insane with a HRMC, or you do what I would do, and that is just to bring in another model that is able to join any link team. So it could be the Shangji, I think, can join any fire team, or the Pangolin can join any fire team, or the Haidao can join any fire team. So it's really quite flexible there. So if you're going to run something like this, you take the Yan Huo FTO and you bring in one of those guys. If it's, say, for example, the Shangji, you can take the tactical awareness Spitfire guy. So that guy's perfect for covering that gap in the range band between 16 inches and, say, 20 to 24 inches. Because anything beyond that, the missile launcher is going to fire at, and anything that's really close, you probably go with the YuJing. And with a setup like this, even though the Yan Huo is very slow, just moving 6 inches per order with the 4-2, you've got a couple of tactical awareness orders to move him out there. And then you fill out this as a limited insertion list with another 7 guys, right? So maybe you throw in the Zanjeers like we had before. Let's take a Hacker, Fort Observer, Lieutenant, Combi Rifle, a Haidao with MSV2. No, we can't do that because we're out of... we'll drop the Hacker and we'll throw in the MSV2 like this. And maybe a Pangolin like that. Something like this. So we do need a Hacker in there. Then we could maybe throw in another one of these, since he doesn't cost any SWCs. And we've got another like 60 points to pop in there, so I don't even know what that would be. Maybe a Hack Tower or something, just something really huge, Mo Wang. So you could actually get this guy in here. Anyway, you guys get the picture. So the idea is that you have the Yan Huo moving up the table, and because he's got 2 missile launchers and he's in Haris team, he can fire the missile launcher with 3 burst, which can be huge. If you're really feeling like we're not getting enough points in here, you could have 2 Yan Huos. So you move them all across the board. You've got an HRMC to really clear them out. Actually, no, bear in mind you can't take the HRMC because he's not an FTO. You take the multi-HMG, sorry, in like this. And you take the Shangji out, sorry. So you'd have the multi-HMG, which works a bit like the HRMC in this case because it can fire 5 times. But you've got the option of firing the explosive round with 2 dice in the reactive, which is pretty strong as well. I don't know how well this list would really go, just because it's a bit unwieldy. You're going to be getting into some face-to-face roles where you might get slowed down quite a lot. They may throw a lot of smoke grenades to defend their list. It's a bit vulnerable against hacking, but it is something that this sectorial can achieve if you're willing to give it a go. So just to recap, I think those are the main angles you want to take with list building for this faction. I think that the tactical awareness pain train with Taisheng and the Dalian is probably the best. You can go with a lot of drop troopers, although it's a bit of a risk, it's a bit gimmicky. I think if you are going to run the Zanjeer link with the Haidao MSV2 sniper, try and build the rest of the list around 1 or 2 sort of powerful pieces. Try not to put too much in there. You don't really want to have a list with 12 or 13 orders in it. You want to try to go for 14 or 15. So you're going to be basing it around either a Hack Tao, Hulang, or a Mo Wang, something like that. That's the way I would go with it. But yeah, looking forward to playing a fair bit more, especially with the tactical awareness group. We'll see how things go. Really enjoying painting up the models, and hopefully come up with some bat reps for you guys as well. Anyway, that's it.